Okay, we are going to plan Don's case from scratch. So we just opened this in the Acteon AIS3D app. This is the software that comes packaged with your Acteon CT. This is what I use every day. So we're at the initial screen. Nothing's been done yet. We can see Don's rendering here. And so we recognize this case from the slides before. And we're gonna jump right ahead to importing some data. So we're just gonna play on the top at this point. So I'm gonna go to import data. I'm gonna bring in Don's upper scan. Okay, so we're gonna find the upper scan. Okay, and I'm just gonna hit assisted, and we're gonna let the software AI figure out where this is supposed to line up. So it thinks for a couple seconds. Nicely overlaid. We confirm that by taking a peek at all of our slices here and just make sure that's wrapping the hard tissue, which is the enamel. And you can see a very nice, intimate wrap. Okay, you can even visualize the soft tissue in the CT as far as the palatal soft tissue. Okay, so we're going to hit apply. Now, we've also talked to the lab at this point, and they've done a pre-op wax up. So we're going to bring that in as well. So we're going to call this wax up. And what's nice is because I've already brought in the anatomy and the lab does the wax up right on top of the anatomy, when the lab sends me back Don's pre-op STL and his wax up STL, I simply select that I want to bring in the new STL in the same orientation that I just moved that one. So we're going to go ahead and quickly find that. And you can see it comes in pre-aligned. So the way the lab has it designed is, of course, they are working in a system like this, where they're doing a wax up directly over Don's current teeth. So when the lab's using exocad or 3Shape, they simply re-export both of these files, the initial and the wax up, and that allows me to have them oriented in space. Okay, so that's the easiest way to do that. Now, on top of that, while the rendering is convenient, it'd be more useful if we actually had some segmented bone here. So we're going to jump down to the segmentation tab, and we're going to click bone. So we want to segment out the bone. I'm going to say don't include the teeth, since the teeth won't be there when we're all done with it. And we're just going to click segment maxilla. So another new component of the AIS software is the incorporation of artificial intelligence. And so they're going to artificially intelligence is going to process this bone, recognize what's the maxilla, delete the teeth, and is going to give us a nice model that we can actually manipulate. So we can edit the model, we can 3D print the model, we can design guides on the model if we decided to, but it's going to give us a lot more to work with when it comes to an actual bone model and not just a rendering. Even though renderings are convenient, but the segmented bone is certainly more so. So it's just about done segmenting the bone. Here's its initial proposal. Looks good to me. Next step, if we want to, we can edit some stuff here. If we wanted to say, hey, I don't need all of this stuff in the sinus, maybe your CT has a wider field of view, you can go ahead and just kind of lop off what you don't need. That way you're not working with such a large file. But I'm happy with this maxilla here. So we're going to hit finalize. Okay, we're going to pop back into the planning portion. We can turn off our rendering at this point, and now we have our models. We have our wax up, our initial, and our bone. So we can toggle these on and off as we're going about our planning. Let's go ahead and do our CPR curve. We're going to do the maxilla. Once again, AI incorporated into the software, so we're going to allow the AI to draw the panoramic curve for us for the maxilla. And they allow you to do one for the maxilla or the mandible, which I love because they do have different curve ideals. They're different shaped jaws after all. So it's thinking about where it wants the curve to be, and here we go. So it took however many seconds that was, 10, 15 seconds. And if we want to edit this, we certainly can, but I like what we're looking at here. So we're going to hit next step. Now, if we were doing a lower, we would go ahead and do the AI nerve segmentation as well. But we're going to go ahead and jump straight down to implant planning. Okay, so we've turned off the rendering. We now have his initial soft tissue, the wax up, and the bone. If we want to make these prettier colors for any reason, we can make the bone cool blue. We can make his initial a light blue and the wax up white. Okay, how's that? SPG TFAB colors there. Okay, so I'm going to make my pando thickness 10 just so it's a little bit easier to navigate. And one thing we can do is let's go right to number 8, and we can see in this, if we zoom in this cross section, you can see how intimate that bone segmentation is, right? It's showing us the outline of the maxilla and even has removed the teeth. I can take a ruler up, from the bulk of his planned prosthetic, and you can tell we're actually moving his teeth up just a hair. 8's is a little bit too long. And we get to about, let's go 16, okay? And so this can be kind of my ideal alveo plane. So I can go ahead and mark, by clicking at any of these screens, it will change the orientation of all the other screens. And so you can see, look in the pano where that crosshair is moving up and down. So I'm going to put this right at my ideal alveo plane, okay, which we said is about 16. And if the wax up is exactly 15, then that's a nice way to do it. So I can kind of, in my mind's eye, draw this out. It typically goes just shy of the sinus if there's a pneumatized sinus, and it goes right across. So I'll just draw this out for our own visualization. It's going to be something like this. Okay, we saw Don's photos. He shows a little bit of gum in his smile, but it's not, I wouldn't call it a high smile by any point. So my first implant that I'm going to plan, and I can even toggle off. We don't even need his anatomy anymore because we really only needed Don's anatomy to bring the wax up into play. So really all I care about at this point is the wax up in his bone. That's all that matters. I'm going to use his bone to plan where the implants can go, and I'm going to use the digital wax up to plan where I want the implants to go. Okay, so first things first, let's do the posterior implants. I go back to underneath the sinus. I angle to be parallel to the sinus wall. Now, you could aim for 30 degrees here because you're going to use a 30-degree multi-unit, but we have options for 45-degree multi-units, as Dr. Miller discussed. And we can also be, 20 to 30 degrees divergent from our multi-units too. So don't feel like you need to have your multi-units perfectly parallel. I mean, the more parallel, the better, but within 20 degrees is great. So even if your posterior implants are leaning back a little bit compared to your anterior ones, that's okay. Okay, so our initial plan is going to be just kind of mirroring that sinus. Let's go ahead and call it number 13. Now we've got a long list of implants here. Here's the Neodent GM Helix implants. So 375 to 4 is a great width. Can't go wrong with either of those if you have the bone. So we'll do a 4x16. And I'm going to bring in one of the Neodent GM abutments. Okay, and here's my conical MUAs, 30 degrees, 1.5 height. Okay, so let's go ahead. Don has plenty of bone, so we're just going to put this kind of right in the middle. You can see we're paralleling that sinus. Okay, and we'll hit apply. Now we can flip this on its head, and in Acteon you have all these options on the left. You've got the implant size. You can even show the angles. You can turn this off. Once there's another implant, it'll show us the divergent angles here. We can look at the abutment, and we can actually spin the timing. So we're actually spinning the implant because these abutments do have hexes. So here we can spin the implant to be ideal. Let's try to get it to come out of the second premolar. Okay, let's make this a little bit see-through just so we can kind of see what's going on. Let me toggle that back off. Okay, so here we're looking through the bone now, and we can see that. We're going to jump right over to the other side. Okay, similar angle coming out the second premolar. Number 4, it's going to remember the last implant I had, which was the 4x16 with the 30-degree abutment. Put this at the height we wanted. Get that to ride the sinus wall. Get it away from the buccal plate. Okay. And we're going to go ahead, let me spin this around. Get my abutment angle correct. Okay, so something like that. And you can see that what I've actually brought in is what Don's temporary was. That's why you can see the holes in it. But this was the same wax up we had, the teeth in position. But the model I have to help bring in actually turns out you can kind of see where our surgery went, right? We got to the second premolar. Maybe we're a little lingual on the timing on this one. Okay, but this gives us an idea of kind of what kind of spread we can get. Now for Don's temporary, I'm probably not going to have these molars in it. So we'll bring the molars back as we get into the prototypes and the finals, but right now the temporary will leave no cantilevers. So we got our 2 posterior ones that gives us the maximum P in our AP spread. And then generally I'm going to start by looking between the lateral and the central incisor. There's usually a nice island of bone between those 2 teeth, and that's going to be our spot for one of our anterior implants. Don't typically have to go as long. I'll usually plan an implant to be just shy of the nasal floor, and then if we're placing that implant, we notice that it's not very dense, I always have the option to just go up another couple of millimeters, perforate through the nasal floor, and get an extra little length for some additional grip. We're going to switch to a straight abutment and see if we can't get that to be ideal. You can see that's exactly where I placed it. It'd be nice if I had tilted this just a little bit and gave us a little bit less of a shelf there in the front. I can hit show implant angles, and you see this angle is actually showing me the angle after the multi-unit's been on, so the prosthetic angle. So if I set my front one as the master angle, it shows me the divergence, 26 degrees in the back by number 13, 15 degrees here. That's totally reasonable prosthetically, restoratively. That's easy to restore. Okay, we want to stay below 30, ideally below 20 for those prosthetic angles. One more implant here. I'm going to turn these implant angles off. We're going to go into the 9 and 10 region. It's nice to keep things symmetrical when you can. Don's got plenty of bone here. Okay. There we go. All right, so that might be a good plan for Don. Now, in practice, he had a large infection around number 9, and you can see that's why the implant ended up going a little bit closer to here. But that is how you generally will plan the maxilla. Now, let's take it a step further. Let's go ahead and say, all right, we like what we see here as far as where the implants are positioned in the wax up. We see this, the wax up. Let's make a model that we can print and actually have chairside with us. So I'm going to go ahead and save the project. I'm going to go up to data import, and this is all my parts and pieces here, my bone, my pre-up, and my wax up. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my bone, and we'll just call it the copy. And then I can edit this copy, and what I'll typically do is I'll bring in all the implants so I can see where the implants are. I'll make my model a little bit transparent, okay, so I can see through it. And if I come from the side, I can get a good idea kind of where my implants are. All right, let's make it even more transparent if possible. Oops, wrong way. Transparency, we'll do 80%. Okay, so now I can see through it pretty clearly, and I can kind of, I've put these implants at a position where I know I want my alveoplane to be, right? So let's go ahead and line them up so I can actually cut. So I'm going to cut and trim my alveoli line. I'll start with one point out. I'm going to swing around, and this gives me a nice flat kind of cut surface like that. You can see I have all my implants are kind of just above that. And then if you want to come back in the posterior and know you're going to have a little bit of a bevel in the back, we're going to go ahead and cut that out. Okay, and now I have an adjusted model. We're going to hit apply changes. All right, and so now let's see what the final looks like. Let's toggle off our teeth. We'll toggle off the original bone. So now I have this model that I could print, kind of get used to, have access to, and I have an idea of what it should look like when the teeth are out and the alveoplasty is done, versus this model, which we can make, let's say, a different color for fun. We can kind of see the amount of alveo that's planned here. Okay, so that's an idea of how much bone we're going to be reducing in Don's case. All right, so that's our planned maxilla. Quick and dirty, you get faster at this the more of these you do, but that gives you an idea immediately that, hey, we actually have a good amount of spread for just the 4 implants traditional coming out the second premolar. We're going to all be within 20 to 30 degrees of each other, and everyone's going to be happy. All right, thank you.